away from my family for 13 months was, it was arguably the toughest fight of my life, and the toughest fight I didn't have to throw a punch. Okay, so yeah, so I was in Singapore, February, just gonna be there for a couple months just to coach, and then in March is when boom, COVID hits the whole world. The whole world goes on lockdown. Singapore gets really strict. It was kind of overwhelming at first, but I'm always been the kind of like no worries kind of guy, and I thought, it'll be over next week. It'll be over next week. Next week come, the next week came, and then the next week came, and it wasn't ending. So it was a little bit scary. And all the other countries around Asia locked down, and I was like, I don't know if I'm going to go back to Thailand, if I was going to be able to go back, and I wasn't able to go back for over a year. So yeah, that sucked. Initially, so it kind of sucked because I was away from my kids. I'm always on and off not seeing my kids anyways for a couple months at a time when I go for coaching or for fighting anyways. So I wasn't too worried at the beginning, but as the months progressed, month by month, it started getting like that dreadful experience. I'm seeing pictures, seeing my kids grow up, and yeah, it's overwhelming not to be able to, not being able to go back to my kids and not knowing when I can go back to my kids. Because anytime I left before for a couple months, I always had a date I knew I was going back. And because of COVID, there was no sure date. And that. Do you remember when Daddy go to America? Miss me? Are you happy I'm back? Do you want to go? You want to go with me, right? Even when I want to go for my fights or go to Phuket, she's always complaining, wants to go with me. Want to go, right? Yeah, so one thing we do are my two boys, Adonis and Major, they're with their grandparents, so she really misses them too. She wants us all to go back and go see them. You can tell them, you can tell the camera. Huh? Miss Adonis. She's like, I miss Adonis, I miss Major. Yeah, that's one thing we haven't really been able to see my boys in, because the grandparents, they don't want to drive the law in because of COVID, so we're dealing with that right now. Sorry, she's. What? Yeah, so she's with me always at the gym, training with me, doing fitness, climbing the ropes, lifting weights. Huh? So I was in Florida, and I just had a bare knuckle boxing fight. Lost, unfortunately, but the only place open in Asia last October was Korea. Korea was the only country that was accepting tourists, but they had the long 15-day strict quarantine that I had to do. But I thought, hey, I can go to Korea. They're still doing MMA shows, so I could still fight while I'm there, and I have a lot of contacts because I fought there before. So I was like, okay, cool. I'll go to Korea. I'll be able to still fight, and as soon as Thailand opens up, boom, I'm right next door, and I can fly back to Thailand. So yeah, I went to Korea. Korea was it was bittersweet. Had great MMA training. I had one fight. I lost by a decision, which I had right after quarantine. But I had really great training, great food, but it was super strict. It was similar to Singapore in that respect. It was just so strict. It was so safe, but you weren't able to like live your life really, and there was just a lot of restrictions on everything. A lot of things were closed down, but I only got a 90-day visa to stay in Korea, and towards the end of those 90 days, I was trying to extend my visa and maybe get some extensions because of COVID, because my family was in Thailand, but unfortunately they didn't let me, and I had no choice but to fly back to America because Thailand still wasn't open at that time. So yeah, it kind of sucked. So January this year, January 2021, I had to fly back to America again, but it was not as bad because I knew this time that Thailand was loosening restrictions, and we had a date that Thailand was going to allow tourists to come back with a stamp on entry. So I went back knowing that it was only going to be temporary, and that was because I knew it was going to be temporary. It was like it was much more. I had a much better experience being back in America, and I spent the whole time in Idaho. It was winter. It was my first real winter in decades. Yeah, and yeah, it was great. I got to see all my family because before, when I was in America, I split my time between Florida, and I was going all over because I was still trying to work and fight and do stuff and make money. But this time it was just all family, and it was pretty awesome. Got to reconnect with all my cousins and my parents, and yeah, I got to experience snowboarding for the first time, which I absolutely fell in love with. Went almost every day for like a month. And yeah, it was great. Had a great time. And then, yeah, in March, we got something lined up so I can fly back to Thailand, and then, boom, March 3rd, I flew back to Thailand, and then that was it. And yeah, once I got back, it was great. And so, yeah, to go back to Thailand, So to go back to Thailand, there's a few things I needed to do. Luckily, I've always been in touch with John Nutt and the promoter at Fight Circus and Full Metal Dojo, and he was still doing shows and doing events even during all this COVID stuff. So I knew I had a good contact that I can be able to fight. And John Nutt said he's planning a big show, Fight Circus 3, which I'm getting ready for right now. And he was going to fly me back, going to help me take care of the quarantine, and then and that was how I was able to fly back. And it was still kind of overwhelming flying back to Thailand because there was a long list of documents you needed. You had to have COVID tests. You've had to have a certificate of entry, all this online paperwork. You had to have your whole quarantine prepaid and pre-booked already, your flight information, travel insurance. So it was a little overwhelming, but once I knew I was able to come and everything got booked, it was, I just started knocking it all out, and then it was okay. So, but I will say, so I've done 3 quarantines so far. In the last 15 months, I've done 3 quarantines. I spent a month of quarantine in Singapore, 2 weeks in Korea, and then in my last 2 weeks, I had to do in Thailand again. And the last 2 weeks were definitely the worst. It was actually like, Thailand was, they do their best, but at the end of the day, quarantine's just like luxury jail. You're locked in a hotel room. You have a lot of super strict restrictions. You get fed 3 times a day, just like jail, on schedule. You have to check in and check with your temperature, and it just sucked being so close to my family, but yet still feeling like I was so far away. And those 2 weeks really, it was drug on. It was so slow. Because in the morning you have to wake up on time, have to report your temperature and your side effects if you have any COVID side effects, which I never have. And even if I did have, I was never going to tell them anyways. So did that every morning and every evening. So like the whole day I'm awake, and you're just stuck in a hotel room all day. So there's nothing else to do, and it's hard to sleep. You're resting all day anyway, so it's hard to sleep anyways. And it was nice being in Thailand, but it was still like, until I finished quarantine, I didn't feel like I was in Thailand until I finished. It's amazing how doing only 6 rounds and about 10 minutes of clinching, you feel like death. You feel like you're not in shape at all.
Sponsor.
So it was kind of a far drive just to do 8 rounds of sparring. Yeah, so March 18th, my last day of quarantine, I got out right at 12. My wife drove up from Hua Hin, yeah, she came and picked me up. As soon as I walked out of the hotel, boom, Yai sees me in the car, opens up the door and rushes out. She comes and jumps up, gives me a huge hug, which was amazing. That was just such a great feeling after literally 13 months not seeing my kids. It was so great to have her in my arms again. And yeah, it's been great now. I've been like a stay-at-home dad I've just been going to the gym and staying at home and chilling with Yai. We're going skateboarding, and it's been really great. And then yeah, see my wife after so long. It's definitely put the whole COVID has definitely put a huge tension on the relationship, just not knowing where money's coming from. And also, people always thought my life was unstable, because anyways, fighting is unstable, but for me, it's never been unstable. I've always had fights, but during COVID, it's made it really, really hard. And it's definitely, being so far apart, it's definitely had its tension. But once we see each other again, it was like, we just, like we left off like we never, what's the word? When seeing her again, it was like nothing. We never missed a step. It was just like, I just saw you yesterday. And then everything was back to normal. Okay, guys. So something interesting about Fight Circus is this, and I have 123 professional fights, Muay Thai, Lethwei, everything. But John Nutt's like, you're gonna do something you've never done before. I'm like, yeah, whatever. And he's like, you'll fight 2 people at the same time, which I'm like, all right. I'm getting paid, right? I'm like, all right, we're getting paid. So I'm down to do it, but it's still kind of crazy. It's definitely. I'd rather fight Lethwei. I'd rather fight bare knuckle with headbutts than kind of do this, because I've now tried it out doing sparring 2 versus 1, and it's a nightmare. It's really, really hard. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not really I'm looking forward to it to get it over with, but I'm not really looking forward to it at the same time. But regardless, it should be fun. It's going to be another experience, another check mark in that list that I didn't even know this was on my bucket list, but I guess it was. So yeah, looking forward to it. Well, yeah, so there's been, there are a couple of really important things about COVID. COVID has definitely taught everybody lessons. Some people, even for me, learn how to be real minimalistic. You learn what's important in life and what matters, and the only thing now that matters is just my family and my livelihood. Like, can I be around my family? Like, that's the only thing that matters to me now, and also just being able to make a living so I can support my family. And it's definitely highlights what's important in life. You always know what's important in general, but being away from family so long and just having so many different stresses and so much uncertainty that COVID has brought, there's some things that always remain the same. And I don't know if that made sense. I kind of like rambling. But I'm gonna restart. Definitely family is the most important, and it's always the most important, but COVID has really just highlighted that. It's definitely delayed gratification, a lesson that I didn't want to learn, but COVID has definitely taught it anyways. Just when you're not seeing your family or seeing people you love for so long, it's like, and not knowing when you're going to see them, you have a huge lesson in delayed gratification, and it's good and it's bad. I don't want to do it again. I have the lesson now. I feel like I'm an expert at it. But yeah.